Have you ever wondered why some choices shape who you become? Not the big dramatic ones, but the quiet ones. What you notice, what you ignore, what you choose to question. I did too, and it changed everything. I am Charles Darwin. I was 22 when I boarded the Beagle. It wasn't supposed to be life-changing, just a voyage, a map, a few sketches. I was a naturalist, not a rebel, not a visionary. The world I stepped into wasn't waiting to teach me. But it did. The seas showed me scale, the birds showed me variation, and the silence between facts. That's where the questions began. I didn't set out looking for answers. I was just collecting specimens, notes, fossils. But somewhere between tortoises and finches, between the Andes and the Galapagos, I stopped collecting and started wondering. Why did two finches on two islands have different beaks? Why were some traits useful and others forgotten? If nature was fixed, why did it keep changing? It wasn't chaos I saw, it was pattern, quiet, consistent, whispering. In Brazil, butterflies mimicked poison to survive. In Argentina, fossils told of creatures that lived once but gave way to smaller, subtler forms. I felt it, but I didn't say it. I couldn't. That idea, change, wasn't just scientific. It was dangerous. It questioned beliefs, churches, entire worldviews. So I kept silent. I returned home, married Emma, gentle, faithful, devoted. Her beliefs were clear: God's plan, creation, certainty. And my thoughts, those quiet questions, might shake that. I didn't want to harm what I loved. I wasn't ready, and neither was the world. But the questions stayed. They grew, not in volume, but in depth. Not as theories, but as quiet invitations. To observe, to listen, to look closer. I searched, I studied, for years. I spent nearly a decade examining barnacles, tiny creatures stuck to rocks and ships, not glamorous but consistent. And they taught me what silence had been saying all along. Change isn't theory, it's structure. I bred pigeons, dug into the soil with earthworms. Each experiment wasn't proof. It was a conversation, with nature, with time, with patience. I hadn't spoken my full thoughts, not even to Emma, because my questions weren't just scientific. They were spiritual, personal, dangerous. If species change over generations, then creation isn't fixed. And if creation isn't fixed, what does that mean for belief? Emma believed in divine certainty. Her faith was gentle, but firm, and I loved her too much to shake that. So I stayed quiet. Let my questions walk beside me, but not ahead of me. Then came a letter from Alfred Russel Wallace. He had never met me. Let the world rage if it must. Nature doesn't shout, it persists. But he'd traveled, observed, wondered, and he arrived on his own at the same unsettling idea: species evolve through selection, through survival. Suddenly, my quiet thought had an echo, and I had a choice: to keep silent or speak, to hide behind caution or step into risk. So I wrote, not a manifesto, not a declaration, but a thread, a careful line woven from fossils, feathers, forms. On the origin of species wasn't loud, it was deliberate, every word anchored in evidence. And when it reached the world answered back. Some praised, some condemned, some called me brilliant, others a heretic. Even the newspapers drew me as half ape, half man. I didn't shout back, didn't debate on stages. I had already said what I needed. Change isn't rebellion, it's recognition. And the truth, once seen, doesn't demand belief, It simply waits, patient, quiet, honest, just like the barnacles. I used to think science was about discovering facts. Now I see it's about inviting questions, not just in labs, but in life. We all evolve, don't we? Not with wings or scales, but with choices. What we learn, what we abandon, who we become. Every belief you've held, every habit you've changed, every time you stopped and asked why, that's evolution, not of species, but of thought. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It whispers. And if you listen, you realize it's always speaking. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to observe. Because once you see how change works, in nature, in people, in ideas, you begin to trust your own ability to change, to grow, to ask better questions, to look deeper. The theory of natural selection isn't about superiority, it's about response, adaptation. It's a mirror, held up to life, to you, to me. So what survives? How do I change? What am I clinging to? What no longer fits? Who might I become if I let myself evolve? I believe that's the core of everything I studied, not just biology, but possibility. Thanks for listening. If anything I've said today helps you see your own life a little more clearly, then I'm grateful. My name is Charles Darwin. The loudest voice, the strongest will. Not always. Often, it's the one willing to listen, to learn, to adjust. In this age of noise and urgency, I hope you find space for quiet questions, for patient thinking, and for truth that doesn't shout, but stays. But maybe what matters most is not how species change, but how people do. Can you remember a time when you let go of an old idea, a belief handed down to you, not because it felt true, but because it was safe? I've done that, quietly, reluctantly, sometimes painfully, and each time I grew, not in fame, not in certainty, but in honesty. Truth is never loud. It's often uncomfortable, but it clears the fog, and once you see through it, you can't go back. We live in a world that's obsessed with answers, quick ones, loud ones. But sometimes the best thing we can do is ask better questions, to ourselves, to each other. How do I change? What am I clinging to? What no longer fits? Who might I become if I let myself evolve? I believe that's the core of everything I studied, not just biology, but possibility. Thanks for listening. If anything I've said today helps you see your own life a little more clearly, then I'm grateful. Charles Darwin.